call these budget hearings back to order. And why don't we just flip the order? Why don't we do capital first, and then we'll go to operating after capital, if that's okay with everyone. And if that's the case, why don't we start with Michelle? And then after Michelle, we'll do Carrie. That's good. So, capital.
Okay. So good afternoon. This does sound a little loud, doesn't it? Okay. The fiscal year 2020 BCPS capital budget analysis is located behind the BCPS operating budget tab in your binders. The proposed FY 2020 capital budget for Baltimore County Public Schools totals $260.3 million. Project funding for FY 2020 includes nearly $171 million in county funds for the balance of the county's share for construction of the replacement Bedford, Summit Park, Deer Park, Red House Run Elementary Schools, New Ridge Road Site Elementary, replacement Chadwick, Coldwick, and Berkshire Elementary Schools, in addition to Scotts Branch Elementary, New Nottingham Site Middle, and in addition to Pine Grove Middle. In addition, $15 million in county funds is included for the planning and design of a replacement Lansdowne High School. However, construction is delayed for the replacement Bedford, Summit Park, Deer Park, Red House Run Elementary, the New Ridge Road Site Elementary, the addition at Scotts Branch Elementary, the New Nottingham Site Middle, addition at Pine Grove Middle, and additional high school seats pending the state's funding commitment. Over 3/4 of the proposed FY 2020 budget is funded by new general obligation bonds, followed by anticipated state aid to forward fund the replacement Chadwick and Colgate Elementary School projects. A total of $42.9 million in FY 2020 state school construction aid funding has been approved by the Interagency Commissions on School Construction, the IAC, to date. In addition, the IAC is preliminarily projecting $5.2 million more in state funding that could be used for school construction projects in the county. However, this amount is subject to change and will not be finalized until mid-June. The proposed 6-year capital program for BCPS totals $675.3 million, with 40% of the funding in the program earmarked for additional high school seats, including a replacement Lansdowne High and the construction of 2 new, as yet unspecified, high schools. Over 90% of the 6-year program is funded by planned general obligation bonds. Beginning on page 5 of the analysis, we have identified issues that BCPS can address. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to the chairman.
And good afternoon. Great to see you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
And I guess I'll actually just turn it right over to you to address the auditor's questions on capital. And once we go through all that, we'll take questions and comments from the council.
Okay.
And then after that, then we'll flip it over to operating.
So good afternoon to you, Councilman and Chairman Quirk, members of the County Council. Thank you for allowing us to present the proposed FY 20 budget for BCPS. And joining me today, I do have Dr. Mary McComas, who is our Interim Chief Academic Officer, and Kevin Smith, Chief Administrative and Operations Officer, and a host of BCPS executive staff here as well. As our teams work together, I want to thank both teams actually for working together so that we can actually get a budget that really focuses on children and keeps kids first. I will start with my comments related to capital so that I can give you an overview, and then once we get to the operating, I will then provide remarks for the operating budget again. But again, as far as our capital budget is concerned, again, thank you for how you understand the impact of the physical facilities on our instructional program. So we just really appreciate that. I also appreciate our Board of Education members who support us as well. I know that we have Kathleen Causey and Julie Henn, members of our Board of Education, our Chair and Vice Chair, here with us today as well. So having said that, the major emphasis of the past several years has been on installing central air conditioning, modernization of our schools, and accommodating student population growth. The beginning of the school year, 2019-20, we'll see the opening of the new Dundalk Elementary School. This new 700-seat school replaces the old Dundalk Elementary School, which was built in 1926. The following year, we'll see the completion of 3 replacement elementary schools to be opened in September 2020. They are Berkshire, Chadwick, and Colgate Elementary Schools. These 3 schools average over 70 years old and need to be replaced by new schools, which would provide a 21st century learning environment. In addition, these 3 new schools will add 645 much-needed seats to relieve persistent overcrowding issues. BCPS has made substantial progress in the last few years installing central air conditioning in our older schools. In 2010, 90 schools in Baltimore County lacked central air conditioning. Today, I can report to you that our students and staff started the 2018-19 school year in air-conditioned schools in all but 8 of our facilities. At the beginning of the upcoming school year for FY 1920, the number of schools that lack central AC will drop to 5, and all of them will be completed through renovations or replacement projects that are currently planned as part of the Schools for Our Future program. Those 5 schools that still lack central AC after September 2019 are Bedford, Berkshire, Colgate Elementary Schools, and Delaney and Lansdowne High Schools. The extensive renovation projects currently underway at Woodlawn and Patapsco High Schools, which include central air conditioning, are on schedule for completion by August 2019. And the county executive indicated that there was planning money, as was stated earlier today, included in the FY 20 budget for design for the construction of the replacement of Lansdowne High School. So with that, I'll start with the capital questions.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll just open up to the county council members for questions or comments. Councilman Marks.
Then I have a question. So thank you very much for coming,
Thank you.
Ms. White. Thank you for your leadership and for always being willing to communicate with me. I do appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman.
3 quick questions, and I'll just start with the most general one. This is the very first capital budget I can recall in my 8 years on the council in which there's not a significant advancement of any major school project in my district. And I think if Councilwoman Bevins was here, she would probably echo a lot of the concerns I have. What do you say to the parents of children in my district where Nottingham Middle School has been delayed and the Ridge Road site and Towson High School planning is not advanced? What do you say to them?
Yeah.
And I know it's not your fault.
Yeah.
I just want to say that. But what do you say to them?
That we understand the urgency and that we share in that sense of urgency to make sure that we have not only a 21st century learning environment for students, but that we have adequate seats in all of our facilities as well, and that if we need new construction, we've been an advocate, and as you know that we've been advocating for new construction and for those construction dollars. Certainly, we know that the state plays a part of that as well. So we share in that sense of urgency. We will continue to be advocates for every area, but particularly in the areas where we know we have overcrowding conditions. In the meantime, we also know that we have been advocates for a 10-year capital plan, which I think is critical. And I believe that we all share in that view of having a 10-year capital plan that we can all agree on, that we can prioritize projects. It is a transparent process where all parents will be able to have input into that planning process, including the Board of Education, stakeholders, as well as county government, where we can then prioritize projects. People will know what's coming first, second, third, and fourth, and that we can have some agreed upon kind of specs, if you will, for what will get done and when it will get done.
Okay. My second question has to do with boundary processes.
Sure.
As you know, the school board is considering a request, and I know school board member Julie Henn is here, to look at a boundary adjustment in the Northeast. Is this something we can also examine comprehensively throughout the county? I mean, the one thing I do hear from the home builders industry is that we are so reluctant to adjust our boundaries. And it leads to situations like in Perry Hall where 20 years ago the decision was made not to build a new school but to build an addition at Perry Hall Middle and an addition at Perry Hall High School. And these schools are just so big now. I mean, is there an interest in looking more comprehensively at boundaries throughout the county?
Well, we do take a comprehensive look, and we go out and we have a very kind of prescribed boundary process that is very inclusive of the public and public input. One of the things that we learned that Sage was sure to share with us, particularly when we did the high school capacity study, that communities came back and they said, yes, we want 21st century learning facilities. We want to make sure that we have adequate seats. But we also want to make sure that we try our very best to preserve the integrity of community schools. And so that's where it gets a little tricky sometimes, because everybody wants more seats and everybody wants to make sure that they have adequate seating for students. But if it comes to a boundary process, not everybody's willing to move to adjacent schools. And so we want to respect the community's wishes around that, while at the same time being able to provide facilities for students that they need and that they deserve. So that has come up in a couple of areas in Baltimore County. It's not just in the Perry Hall area. We find that that's true also in Sparrows Point. It's true in Catonsville, where communities have said very loudly to us that we want to make sure that we preserve our community schools and that we stay in our community. So we want to respect that, but we also have to provide the seats. It's a fine line for us to walk, but we want to be able to address all of those concerns in the area. Certainly with the boundary process, when it comes to making sure that we have adequate seats, we do go out to the community, and we have a robust program for that. And I'm just looking at Dr. Brown because he owns that process.
Okay, final question. There's been some concern expressed about how expensive certain projects are. Roof replacement projects, for example. You look in the budget and roof replacements that are over $2 million. Parking expansions, things like that. Are we absolutely certain that those estimates are as cost efficient as possible?
That's in the bid process, and we do make sure that that is one of the parts in the specs to make sure that we have the best offer, the best price. But it has to also match other kinds of LEED certifications and other specs that are really important to the standards, particularly when you're talking about a school. You have to meet certain standards for safety, for health aspects of it as well. But we do then look at all of those specs. When they meet those specs and they come in as lowest bid, then that's the one that we go with.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Katz.
Thank you very much. Yes, you said there will be 5 schools without air conditioning. Let me just talk a bit about Delaney High School. It's a very large school, spread out. You have some classrooms at times where the temperature's over 100. You have others at the same time the temperature's 90 or whatever. So since we're probably not going to see a new Delaney or maybe even a new Lansdowne, and I forget the 3 elementary schools you mentioned, we're not going to have them next year, the year after, probably the year after that. So are there any plans that the school system has to at least address the problems in the schools where there are classrooms with extreme temperature issues during the spring, summer, and fall?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. We share that, again, as I said before, we do share in that sense of urgency. Nobody wants kids or staff members to be hot. Let me be clear about that. When it comes to a learning environment, and you know this as a former teacher, that it's important for kids to learn at their best conditions in terms of the weather and the heat, the cold. We want kids to be at their optimal learning conditions. So we want to make sure that that's there. Nobody wants kids or staff or teachers to be hot or overheated. But we do have to make sure that we take a measured approach. We do have plans in place. We've been looking at this since we found that there's a delay in our renovations and our replacements and those capital projects. Then we had to regroup, just as good teachers do. When Plan A doesn't work and it doesn't go forward, then you have to look for Plan B. And Plan B means that we had to go back and take a look at some of those. We are going to bring options to our Board of Education on this coming Tuesday for them to consider the various options. There are about 5 different ways that we can go. And they really are dependent upon every building. They're pretty building specific. Every building will have to consider asbestos abatement, electrical processes, ventilation, all of those kinds of things before you can't just have one blanket cooling option for all of the 5 schools that are impacted. So we'll be bringing some options to the board for their consideration this coming Tuesday.
Will the goal be this coming school year then? Because time marches on.
It does march on. Again, we've had to regroup just in the past few months. So this coming school year is going to be really difficult because of those electrical processes, the asbestos abatement, all of those things that have to happen. Where do you put the children in the meantime while you're doing that? So we do need to regroup. We have to be responsible. And we want to make sure that we're providing options for schools and for cooling options, but we have to do so in a way that's not going to significantly disrupt or impact instruction
And
as well.
I think this needs to, I know it needs to be a priority.
Oh, it is.
I've been in some of these classrooms and, ugh, you wouldn't want to teach there, I can tell you. You just would not want to teach there. And I don't care how gifted the children are, the students are, they kind of, after a while.
We
I've
couldn't agree
seen-
more. I think you
and-
can see the speed at which we've gotten a lot of these projects done. It's definitely been a priority for our
Yeah,
administration.
and I would love to see it a goal for this fall. At least some of the classrooms that are just, the heat is just overwhelming.
We are working on it. What I can't do is make a promise that I can't keep. And
I
so I'm
I
true to my
understand
word.
that.
And so I just try to be measured in making sure that we're honest with the communities, we're honest with our staff members, and with our teachers, administrators as well. We can't overpromise and then underdeliver. We have to be careful about what we say that we're going to do, because we have to do what we say and say what we do, right? That's how people trust you. And so with that, we have to be very honest about the complexity of the situation. And it is a very complex situation. Every school is different.
Oh, sure. Sure. And I would hope that this would be one of your top priorities.
It is.
It is.
Of course it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Councilman
Am I
Crandall.
next? Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. Good to see you all. Thank
Good
you
to
for
see
coming
you.
in. I do want to thank BCPS, the board, and the administration for keeping the elementary school projects in the 7th District, keeping them on track and moving. I do want to follow on Councilman Marks' his question just in terms of the cost of some of these things. There's an eye-popping number. We get an itemized listing of capital projects per district, and I saw a number for, and I'm a proud alum of Halliburton Middle School, but Halliburton Middle School roof replacement, it was something like, if I'm not mistaken, $5.7 million. And I know that's not a small school, but it seems like an awfully expensive roof. So I don't know what's driving those costs, and I don't know if you recall a conversation that we had at one of our meetings with a concession stand to complete the stadium at Dundalk High School would be somewhere around $600,000. And I'm thinking, man, I can get some guys from Edgemere, get them over to Home Depot, and they can get it up in a weekend. Now, I know that that's an oversimplification, and I'm being facetious, but it's just the numbers are huge, and and I'm not being critical of the procurement process. I know that there are complicating factors that drive costs, but yeah, these are difficult things to explain to the taxpayer, especially when we're faced with the budget considerations that we're currently faced with. So do you want to address any of that? I mean, it's not
Sure.
really a question. It's just raising a concern.
I'll let Kevin start.
Councilman Crandall, I think we've had quite a bit of conversation about this. One of the things that's happening to Baltimore County, as well as other localities in the area, there are a lot of construction projects in the state that are driving costs, prevailing wage. So some of the roof projects that we've had in prior years didn't have that competition. It's a good and bad thing from the standpoint of, as other localities are starting to utilize more of their capital dollars, that is creating a greater demand for the services that we have. In addition to that, some of the roof projects that you see in now are having the 25-year warranty that is driving the cost a little bit, because we want to get greater value out of our projects. The specific one that you mentioned, certainly that project we're going to be watching with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we're getting the best value out of it. But a lot of this is driven by market condition as we're trying to find the best price to make sure we get the quality that our students and our parents deserve.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And I also I want to make the statement, and I think that this council has done a pretty good job in being critical of the Senate not getting us the money that we've been requesting to advance our projects and advance those 5 schools that are on air conditioned. And I just want to express it's a little bit more than disappointment. It sort of, David, you can attest to this. It's more of it's anger, and I feel with the second oldest school system in the state of Maryland, something that Councilman Katz has brought up, that the state really should have stepped up and helped us more than they did with that, and we'll just have to keep the fight going, and hopefully get that bill passed the next General Assembly session.
We appreciate your
Thank you.
fight. Thank you for it.
Councilman Patoka.
Just want to piggyback on Councilman Crandall's comments about the state's inaction on the Build to Learn Act, and it's mind-boggling that the state Senate continues to find comfort in playing politics with Baltimore County children, and it's not just mind-boggling but disturbing, and so I hope we have better success. They had 2 shots at it too during the General Assembly session, and then during special session they could have taken another shot at it, but they chose inaction rather than action on House Bill 727.
Councilman Marks.
And without naming names, we had a prominent state senator come to our budget hearing who could have maybe pushed the president a little bit more. That was frustrating to me.
Anyone else have any? Councilman Jones, you
I'm sorry, I was just smiling. First of all, thank you so very, very much for your service, your entire team, and everything you do to educate our children in Baltimore County and put them on the right path to success in life. So I certainly appreciate that. As you know, we are at a crossroads in Baltimore County, and we all want nothing but the very best. But of course, the very best costs a lot of money. And, I hear my colleagues, I hear everyone worried about what the General Assembly is going to do next year in terms of whether or not there will be any unfunded mandates. And I guess I can't help but wonder, where will we be then if we are taking the steps of increasing $30 million today above maintenance of effort? So I guess my question is, which is sort of a request from someone else, but I feel obligated to ask it.
Sure.
What would you do if we were to cut $30 million from your budget?
Well, let me start with, first of all, thank you for your question. And I know that once you do approve, then the fear is always that how do we pull back? How do we pull back from there? We can't pull back. But we won't have to. We won't have to pull back. We have more students who are entering Baltimore County Public Schools. We're growing. The good news is that we're growing by 1,000 kids per year. We are expanding in every way possible. Our school system is becoming increasingly diverse day by day in terms of the number of English learners that we are servicing, the number of needs in terms of special education needs, and I know that this is bleeding, this is going from capital to operating. But if we're thinking about the maintenance of effort level, again, maintenance of effort is the floor, but that's the floor that we're going to need to stand on because we're looking at more diverse needs and more complexities. So those complex needs, if you're looking at the capital side, of course, we are expanding. We need the room and the growth and the seats for that. On the operating side, everything that we're asking for, this is a people for our people budget. And so we are going to need the people to service the children that come to us every single day. So there's not going to, so if I could just relieve any of your fears about how do we then, will we need to pull back 2, 3, 4 years from now, that's not what our data suggests. Our data suggests that we are increasing in size, we are increasing enrollment, we are increasing in complexities and diversity, so that the floor that we establish now will not have to be pulled back from in the years to come. So I would just ask you to keep that take that into consideration as you're considering this budget.
Okay, so what would happen if we were to cut $30 million today?
It would be a tremendous, again, keep in mind that the county executive has already made some cuts to our budget, and that we are going to have to already do a significant amount of kind of regrouping based on those cuts. And we're thankful for the budget that he has put forward. But any additional cuts to what has already been done will mean an increase in so many in ways. For instance, teacher workload, thinking about regrouping with other kinds of textbooks that will be needed, looking at how we might have to completely regroup, reorganize, and redo. It's not just the effort that is an issue, it's the actual costs and the fiscal impacts of the system, the opportunity costs, if you will, of those things that we had not anticipated. So I see it as a huge, it would be a detriment to the system if we were to slash the system in that way.
Right, and that would, of course, be on the operating
On operating,
side,
ready to
which we're going to get to, too. But
Sure.
anybody questions on capital, Councilman Jones?
While I'm on a roll, I know we're not there at the operating, but I feel the need to say it, at least get it off my chest. So one of the things that I was very happy to see was that we not leave anyone behind, because I think all too often we forget that the school system is a well-oiled machine, if you will, and it has all these components, and everybody has a part to play, and everyone's important. So it's always good to see that the school support personnel are being included. But then I find out that the principals and administrators are not. So are we taking one step up and 2 steps back? I mean, are they somehow become less valuable? Can you? 'Cause, I mean, the world that I come from in the fire department, I would see it time and time again. The administration would give a raise to the rank and file, and it cost $10 million. Then there's this 30 chiefs that's running the organization that it costs like $50, and they look at you and say no, just because. So I'm not saying that the principals or the administrators would cost $50, but can somebody explain how did it come that they are somehow excluded out of the prosperity that appears to be in front of me?
That is not the choice that I made, nor did the Board of Education. The Board of Education put forward a budget that I proposed that included all 5 of our bargaining agencies, so that no one would have been left out of that equation. And so we felt, as a school system, that it would be important to make sure that everyone across the board had the benefit of those increases. We certainly understand that there are fiscal constraints, and we respect that. But as a school system, we did put forth a proposal that included everyone.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Katz on capital?
Yes, thank you very much. As I look at the projections of population in the various schools, I see the future. We're going to have schools that are more overcrowded than they are today. With so many religious institutions in Baltimore County who have what I would call Sunday school facilities, has the staff or the school board taken a look at possibly renting some of this space? I mean, I know the church that I went to, they rented the Sunday school to the county school system, because I remember the teachers were made to put everything in one closet, so you wouldn't have any a schoolroom on Sunday, but I think that's something you really need to look at. And I don't know if you're doing that or not, but
That isn't anything that I'm aware of that we've done. And in the past, I think primarily because of separation of church and state laws in the past, but not to say that that isn't a possibility. It's something
I
that
don't-
we can certainly explore.
I don't think it would have. I can't imagine.
I have
having
no
it in
idea.
church and
So
state.
that's
You're just
something that the team can
renting
take
a
back.
building. I don't see where that would be a problem. But
We can certainly explore
Yeah,
it.
it-
We
it-
accept all the ideas because,
Yeah.
again, we need the
Yeah.
space. We know that our kids need the space. And so we're open to various suggestions. Thank you.
Councilman Jones?
I do have a couple of questions, or one big one on capital. One of the things I hear so often from people that are in the building trade, these are developers, these are builders, and they always say, they say, you're building something for $130 million that I can do for 80 or 70. So I'm just wondering, are there any attempts, first, what would it take to change the dynamics on how we build schools so that instead of us always feeling like the only option is to ask the citizens for more money, but maybe we become smarter in how we do it? So what are some of the impediments that stop us from doing it better? And then two, what actions, if any, are we undertaking to move to that place?
I'll start, and then I'll let you jump in there. So I'm going to address the assumption in your question first. And then there's an assumption that we're not already doing it better. And so I just want to, I'll start there just to say that we're building schools to last. And so that's again, I don't think, I'm only half joking here, but to say that sustainability is important. Certainly safety is important in all the safety standards, but sustainability is also important. We want to build schools that will last us over time. And fortunately, we have built, we are in some pretty old buildings right now. We have some pretty old buildings, but they have been able to sustain us over time. So we don't want to neglect the quality. On my end as superintendent, I am setting up other cabinet-to-cabinet meetings with other school systems, though. So it's not just for a capital plan, but for operating as well, where we can share ideas and we can come together because we can always get better at what we do. And so that way we can look at what other school systems are doing in terms of cost savings and how they're saving money. So that's from my end. From a other end.
Councilman Jones, excellent question. But as I also talk to some of those same builders, all I remind them is the requirements that we have to use, building requirements both locally and statewide, are vastly different than what they do. The level of specificity that we have to do for schools does not nearly compare to what they're doing on the regular general construction side. That doesn't make it better or worse. It just, our end users are children. And so we have to have different, in addition to that, we have to take all of our projects through certainly the Board of Education process, the county process, IAC, and BPW. That's not what the current builders do in the outside. We're certainly looking at other partnerships as it relates to public-private partnerships and other creative ways in working with our county colleagues and to finding better ways or additional ways to deliver projects. But as I ask them, when they tell me that, they can build it. I ask them, come in and see me. Let me lay out my requirements. You lay out yours. You come up with a number at the end, and I'll show you what my number is. And at every one of the conversations I've had, they left smiling saying, well, maybe it was some other factors there I didn't have. So I just wanted to throw that out to them. So when they tell you that, tell them to come see us. We'll lay the numbers out together. And if they can do my requirements and go through the things that we have to go through and do it for cheaper, we will have that conversation with them every single time and bring it to the superintendent.
So I guess one of the things that I just think about, right? So I'm thinking, we build a new high school, we spend $15 million for plans. We're going to build another high school, another $15 million for plans. Most of us don't drive a customized car. Most of us don't live in a customized house. There should be a basic plan that we have that if we're going to build a high school, as long as it fits on this piece of ground, we can pick it up and move it and fit it on another piece of ground and not have to spend $15 million every time we design it. The other thing is I'm wondering to myself, could there be some type of pool, if you will, or some collaboration with all the school jurisdictions and say, okay, for X amount of dollars, we're going to belong to this whatever. And what that means is we're going to take our plans that we just paid $15 million for, and we're going to stick it on a shelf. If you want to buy it and use it, then maybe you're going to give us $5 million, and you take it. Now you got plans for $5 million, sort of like a swap meet. I'm just trying to think out of the box. There has to be some better ideas out there to conform with the requirements, yet still save significant money, because every one of our schools are customized, and every one of them have beautiful things that we all should be very happy with, but most of them are sort of expensive, and you would think, $15 million is just on the planning alone. So if there was some way we can save on the planning, that's a start.
Councilman Jones, thank you. As we've done with the elementary program, we use prototypes. We have currently 4 prototypes that we use for elementary, and it's based on the actual site orientation of that school, what configuration. Some of those schools may have been a 300-seat or 400-seat, and we're taking to 700, so it's a different configuration. We will do that for our middle school projects and our high school projects. The sort of consortium piece that you're talking about, we've been talking about that for at least 3 years here in Maryland and doing that, but I think we're also trying to work with IEC to find a way to do that where they can spearhead that activity to make sure that there's a battery of prototypes that can be used across the state. Whenever we take on any building project that we haven't done in a long time, we do a little of a road show. We go around the state and in the local areas to see what types of high schools have been the most efficient, which ones have given the greatest return on investment as it relates to green services, how do you do orientation on the various sites we have, what configuration that looks like. So all of those things will be considered. The $15 million that are used for planning design, that's a placeholder number. That number could be more or it could be less based on what's actually going to happen on that very site. But what we don't want to do is be in a situation where one school has an $18 million placeholder for planning design and another has 12. Then it starts looking like disparity. But it may not be disparity. If you look at a site that may have a tremendous amount of rock on that site, once you hit that rock, the cost starts going up immediately. It doesn't mean that project is better or worse. It just means as we started digging into the soil started yielding rock that we have to haul out in order to build a school there, which is going to drive costs. So, but I think the crux of your question is we want to continue to look at prototype options, and that's something that this superintendent and our board has been keen on, making sure that we have prototypes that are 21st century learning environments that are conducive for learning, but we're getting the greatest value for it.
Well, let me just say that I really appreciate your response, because that's exactly the kind of thing I like to hear, that we have these prototypes and we're moving towards a place where we will save money in the future. So I really appreciate your explaining that to me. So that's exactly where I was going, and you guys are already there, so that's great.
Councilman Marks in Patoka.
One final question from me. In 1997, the County Council passed a resolution requiring quarterly spending reports or quarterly capital project reports. They're supposed to be provided to the auditor. Sometimes I think they've been late, so I just wanted to bring that up. Is there any way the council itself can get copies of those reports? They detail the progress of school construction projects, how much has been spent. Is there a way we can get that?
Absolutely. That can be made available to you, and I believe what you're talking about, that happened twice.
Okay.
And so that has since been corrected.
That's good to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Patoka.
Yes, I just wanted to add a word of caution on prototypes that might be too rigid, because as you mentioned, site conditions vary from location to location, and neighborhoods and how the footprint of the building and the orientation of the building to neighborhoods can modify that prototype. I know that there are certain things you need inside the school, but what comes to mind is in my district, in the second district, in Summit Park Elementary, which has 10 trailers on it right now, and we're hoping to get that one I'm sorry, Councilman Catch advised me that they're learning cottages, but there are 10 of them. And so I know that that is in the budget for Baltimore County, but not on the state side. But there are issues with the footprint of the building encroaching upon the communities, the backyards of the community, and there's not enough separation. And so I would ask that while what goes on the inside of the building to create a proper learning environment for our children and that supports our teachers' ability to teach our children, I would also ask that the neighborhoods be considered on what goes on outside the building. So, for example, solid landscape buffers, I think, would help both the neighborhoods and also the schools to keep some level of separation. And so I think it's important to not be too rigid in that prototype, so you have some flexibility from community to community, neighborhood to neighborhood, and the size of the school itself and footprint of the building.
Thank you.
Any other questions on capital before we go to operating? Is council okay? All right, why don't we dive into the operating budget then, and then Carrie?
The proposed FY 2020 budget for BCPS totals $1.8 billion and reflects an increase of approximately $91 million, or 5.3% over the FY 2019 budget. The general fund portion of the county's budget increases by $41.8 million, or 4.8%, largely due to personnel expenses, including active and retiree health insurance, COLA increases, increments in longevities, and new positions. But these increases are somewhat offset by the inclusion of $10 million in additional budgeted turnover. The special fund, or non-county portion of the budget, increases by $43.9 million, or 5.7%. The proposed budget relies on the use of $30 million of BCPS's fund balance. The proposed budget exceeds the state's maintenance of effort requirement by at least $33.9 million. It's important to note that committing ongoing funds above the MOE level represents a binding funding commitment. As such, we've identified potential reductions for your consideration, and these begin on page 8 of the analysis. The potential reductions include reductions to the STAT program funding, the administration program, overnight travel, and the Dreambox program. We've also identified several significant issues and changes for discussion, and these begin on page 12 of the analysis. These include the Kerwin Commission and associated funding, the proposed COLA increase, the new Watershed Charter School, school climate and safety initiatives, and personnel vacancies. Other discussion issues begin on page 18 of the analysis and include various programs such as ESOL, special education, and Passport, and other topics such as the extended school day, partnerships with CCBC, and the recent audit report of BCPS's procurement and travel policies. And so at this time, I'd like to turn the hearing back to Chairman Quirk and Ms. White. Okay.
The floor is yours, and obviously, spend a little time on the STAT program. I know that's kind of interest for many of the members. And then if you could just take each of the different issues, and then open up the questions from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed FY 20 budget focuses on 2 overarching themes and 5 key areas that I will highlight for you this afternoon. The first is our People for Our People, which includes 1, growth in our special education and English learner populations, and 2, emphasizing literacy and mathematics. The second is areas of great interest to the community, including overall system-wide growth and infrastructure needs and transportation and school climate. Those are all part of the operating budget. The bottom line of this presentation is that although we must continue to provide resources for effective teaching and learning, we also need people for our people. BCPS must invest additional resources to provide for the academic progress of students with disabilities and English learners, who are some of our most vulnerable populations. While overall instructional resources have increased to support the aggregate enrollment growth over the past several years, 5-year growth rates for students identified with disabilities include autism, which is up about 28%, those who have developmental delays, which is up about 46%, and those with multiple disabilities, which is up 50%, which increased much faster than the overall enrollment growth. So the number of English learners grew 130.3% over the past 10 years through FY19. The proposed FY20 budget improves student-to-teacher ratios and instructional caseloads across the system for both special education and English learner students. Our English learner population is growing exponentially. Our ESOL enrollment was 7,642 on October 1st, 2018, and is currently 8,295 students, which means that we have enrolled over 650 ESOL students since October of this school year. Reading and writing in school every day is critical for student achievement in all subject areas. We must teach students how to read, write, think, and compute like professionals in every field, and how to behave in socially acceptable ways. Hence, literacy and school climate are still focal points for my administration. BCPS our expanding infrastructure needs require additional resources to keep up with the pace of growth, enrollment growth affecting transportation, facility maintenance, and security systems. BCPS has addressed some of these needs the past several years and will continue to do so in the proposed FY20 operating budget. So some of the major highlights that I just would like to go over, and then I'll get into some of the details of it. Again, special education teachers, this request has 50.5 FTEs. ESOL teachers, we're asking for over 21 teachers, 21 FTEs. Literacy and mathematics. In terms of STAT, and Councilman, you asked me to address STAT, so I'll just pause here for a second. And I understand from the county auditor's recommendations and perspectives that there are 4 options for consideration. Again, STAT has already been significantly reduced above and beyond what I have already proposed. I have already proposed reductions in this year, for this upcoming year, and then over the next 3 years. There are $9 million that we can save in the upcoming year, $4.5 million that is planned savings, and another $4.5 million by switching the type of device that we're looking at, and then looking at a planned another cost savings of at least $17 million moving forward over the next 3 years. Any additional cuts, those proposed cuts that I sent forward to the Board of Education are those that would preserve the integrity of the instructional program. Any additional slashing of that program would have a significant implication and impact on curriculum, on instruction, on assessment, on professional learning, on some of the other kinds of communication aspects of it. This is a parent communication tool as well. It would have an impact on grading and reporting. Again, it is not just about a device, but it is about an entire ecosystem for instruction at this point in time in this day and age. Other highlights of the budget also include high school dual enrollment, CTE support. I am a huge proponent of CTE growth and expansion. We know that a lot of kids learn by doing, and so that this budget highlights that expansion so that kids can have additional access to those career and technology education programs that we know that they will need, especially moving forward. This includes GT support, pre-K support, because we know that we have to begin very early on reaching our learners, particularly in literacy, instructional support. For the growth and infrastructure side, this budget is an increase by 96.8 positions, 70 for growing student enrollment. Again, we have 1,200 additional students this year. 3.5 assistant principals for those small schools that lost them a few years back, And so we want to reinstate those assistant principals because there are certain things that only a school administrator can do. This budget also accounts for COLAs and step increases, IT infrastructure, facility maintenance and support, and new contracted bus routes, bus attendants, and transportation support. When it comes to school climate and safety, it also accounts for 16 additional FTEs for school counselors, 15 and a half for school social workers, 5 FTEs for health assistants, and 3 additional FTEs for mentor teachers to support our new teachers as well. So again, those are the highlights of the operating budget. Again, I'd like to thank the council for your support and your consideration of our operating budget request as we continue to provide a high-quality educational program for our students. We'll take any questions that you may have.
I'll start out real quick, and I know I think all the members have some questions. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on with Kerwin and Annapolis, and potential maybe costs maybe next fiscal year, or what's coming down the pike that we really need to start preparing for from a purely budgeting standpoint?
So with Kerwin, what we know is that there are 6 related kind of grant opportunities that are embedded into the Kerwin legislation. We also know that we haven't received the rules yet. So although we are pleased with any kind of release of funding, we don't have the rules yet for what that will mean. We do know that what we have planned for in Baltimore County, literacy support, looking at concentrations of areas where we have high poverty, we have support built in there, looking at additional professional development and mentoring support. A lot of what would go into year 1 would be that professional development and teacher kind of staff development and support. That would go into year 1. And then year 2 would then get into more of the literacy support as well as special education support. So again, once we have more of the guiding rules, then we would be able to hone that a little bit more. But that's what we know that's coming down the pike, and that's what we plan for in those 6 categories.
Questions, Councilman Rocha?
I'll just say, I've substituted in Hartford County Public Schools, and it is a bit of a day and night. We are investing in teachers. We are growing our teachers. Hartford County, which, to be fair, does some things better than us. The physical side, I think, they're a newer jurisdiction. They are cutting back. We're investing. They're cutting back. And I think that is an area where this investment is very good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Koch?
Yes. You mentioned the STAT program, and I was disturbed when I took a look at the State Board of Education site in regard to the PARCC scores for the Baltimore County Public Schools, and I wish we were doing better. I saw a high school in Baltimore County where 8% of the students had successfully completed the testing requirements, et cetera, yet 90% of the students graduated. And, I'm still hearing from people, well, you're graduating people who can't read or write and things like that. So what I'm leading to is, when are we going to take a close look at STAT to make sure that it is helping us academically? I mean, all your goals, I know all your goals that you've mentioned all lead to one thing, and that's academic performance. And that's what we all expect we want successful schools. There's no doubt we want all of our students to be educated and be able to either get a job or go to college, whatever, and be successful in life. And again, I urge people to take a look at the site of the State Board of Education and see what's happening in Baltimore County. When I take a look and I saw that all of our elementary schools are 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star. Yet I look at the 3 stars. My gosh, the academic performance is not high, and they have subjective factors they look at to kind of bump it up. So you have a situation where a particular school doesn't do well in math, and it says, you get so many points for that, I don't know, 15, 5 out of 15 because you're not doing well. Then further down it says, talks about the execution of the curriculum, and they rate the school real high. Now, how can and this is state, this isn't you. Okay, so how in the world can the state say that this school is really doing a good job executing the curriculum, yet the kids aren't doing well? The star system makes little sense to me. And so when will you begin to take a look at STAT and how it is hopefully positively affecting academic performance?
So thank you for your question,
Yeah.
Councilman. First, I would say as a teacher, and you're a teacher, who knows students best? Teachers.
Exactly right.
I'm pleased to be able to work closely with Abby Baden and TABCO and with the Teachers Association as well. Our teachers know our students best. Having said that, STAT is evaluated twice a year. There's a mid-year evaluation and an end-of-the-year evaluation. And when we started, we had Johns Hopkins University evaluate the STAT program so that we were not evaluating ourselves. To have that type of external evaluation takes into account both the quantitative data but also the qualitative data. And our teachers have said time and time again how much they value the STAT program. Again, this is not just where you look at a laptop and say, laptop, I want you to improve student achievement. That's not what improves student achievement. As a teacher, I'm sure that you understand that there are multiple variables that go into whether or not a child will perform. And that has to do with attendance. It has to do with behavior. It has to do with, yes, the quality of the curriculum and the quality of the instructional program. What happens between the teacher and the student matters. It matters if a child knows what he or she is learning and why they're learning it, what the objectives are, and if the teacher knows how to unpack those objectives. We have high-quality teachers in our school system. We also know that when standards are raised, right? So again, over the past several years, and keep in mind that ESEA, that was established in 1962 under Lyndon B. Johnson, has been reauthorized several times since between then and now. Every single time the standards go up and up and up. In that, professional development has to happen. The learning environment has to change. Parents have to understand what's happening, and the curriculum changes have to go into place. That happened under NCLB. It happened under now ESSA, and now under new ESSA regulations, there are new standards. With new standards come new professional development and new ways of teaching and learning. Right now, we're in a 21st century learning environment. And so again, it is hard to draw a line between a laptop and the student achievement results without also drawing lines to attendance, parent communication, parent investment, the quality of the pre-K program, the quality of an early childhood program, the quality of the curriculum materials. All of those things factor into student achievement and performance. But one thing that I would say is the most important qualifier about whether or not something is working is the quality teacher telling us whether or not something is working. And through our mid-year and end-of-the-year evaluations, our teachers have said so time and time again.
Again, so we can expect in the future academic achievement.
If you want to get directly into academic achievement, what the STAT report says, what the Hopkins report tells us is that our students are making the greatest gains in grades 1, 2, and 3. That's where they're making the greatest gains, and that's where they've had the benefit, quite frankly, of a 21st century learning environment for the longest period of time. We started this at the elementary elementary level. We started in 2014. Where they've had the benefit of this type of instruction the longest, that's where we see the academic gains, and that quantitative data is available to the public on the website. All of those reports are available.
Yeah, and a couple more questions on page 16 of the auditor's report. I notice where it says student transportation that we continually have a high number of vacancies. I see that there are some private contractors that the system has transports our students. Are the private companies more reliable than, in other words, we have a lot of vacancies, and so I know that's not easy to deal with. I know that. So would it be more beneficial to go to more private contractors?
We have a number of private contractors, and we are increasing the number of private contractors because of the increase in our ESOL population as well as the increase in our special education population. I wouldn't say that they're more reliable than what we do, but again, it's a matter of making sure that we incentivize our bus drivers as best as we can, and we've been in conversation with our bargaining agencies to be able to do that, to make sure that we have great attendance with our bus drivers when, again, I think sometimes overlook the fact that we have 808 buses on the road every single day. And so where we know that we have pockets where we can do better, for the most part, we are transporting kids, and we're getting to and from school, 81,000 kids twice a day, to and from school, timely and in a safe way as well. We can always do better, and we continue to look at the contracted routes as well. And where we don't have enough, we continue to contract out. We've done so just this past year, and we'll continue to do so.
I basically was just trying to figure out what can be done, because I know this is not an easy situation for the schools.
We need drivers.
I know
So everywhere
that.
you go to the
I'm
supermarket,
not
tell people we
going
need
to take
drivers.
the job. Sorry, not going to do it. But, well, if I can pick my school, maybe. The next question, where it says instructional salaries, and I see in 2018 you had 7,342 positions, and there were 102 vacancies, and you can see this year 173 vacancies. What I'm trying to figure out is for this year, the budgeted for 7,489, 7,500 positions, basically, instructional salaries. Are there positions in place for each one of these 7,500 positions? There are. Okay, so we have a vacancy of 173. Are they long-term substitutes? What is going on here?
Let me find where you are, Councilman. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's page 16 in that chart.
You have it? Oh, I see. Okay.
Does she have, do you have the blue lines at the top of the page?
I do. I see.
Yeah, okay. And just look at the instructional salaries and the number of vacancies, et cetera.
Oh, I see. And your question is whether or not we have long-term subs?
I just think I'm just concerned about the high number of vacancies, and I was just wondering if they are real vacancies. In other words,
I do.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. Well, sometimes they are long-term subs, and other times that they are, actual vacancies. Keep in mind that we do recruit aggressively throughout the school year. And with a teaching force with over 9,000 teachers and over 18,000 employees, again, it's if you have any vacancy, it's one vacancy too many. But in relative terms, for a large school system, I think that this is pretty much in keeping with what you would see with any other school system. We certainly aggressively make sure that we are recruiting and that we are offering contracts. Many times we'll offer advanced contracts to candidates. We have a robust teacher development program where we work with our colleges and universities. We have our teachers, interns, interning with us, and we have PDS schools, professional development schools, where we are attracting and recruiting all the time so that we won't have as many vacancies. Again, because whenever we have a vacancy, that means that we have a gap in terms of instructional performance.
Of these 173.6 vacancies, each one of those positions, there are students that this particular person either teaches or whatever. That's what I'm trying to...
Instructional line. Let me ask my team. Was it just teachers, or are we looking at paraeducators as well? That line. Teachers. Teachers and paraeducators. Yes.
It's not guidance counselors or...
Mainly teachers and paraeducators, instructional assistants.
So, but there could be some guidance counselors?
Yeah, they're in activities, so
Okay.
they're not in instruction.
So, I guess it's...
So where we have a vacancy, we do have substitutes, and just
Right.
we do have substitutes. And I know as a former principal, that's what you do. I mean, you have to have a long-term sub, and hopefully you have a qualified, high-quality long-term sub. And we want to make sure that they're certainly degreed individuals. And that's another reason why it's important for us to have teacher mentor-type positions that are in our schoolhouses as well. So in our secondary schools, we have department chairmen who will work directly with long-term sub if they're there. Our administrators do the same. But then we also have our consulting teachers who will coach and mentor as well, so that we can try to minimize any gaps that may exist.
What do we pay our substitutes? What is the regular and the long-term?
About
what
$90
about the
a day.
long-term?
That's a good point.
I know that in the schools, they'll say, well, okay, you have third period free every Tuesday. Well, you might have that as a planning period, but also we can call you to substitute should we need you for period 3 on Tuesday. You're not using I don't want to call it a scheme. You're not using that, a scheme like that.
No, we have to preserve teachers' planning time. And
Well,
so we do.
You didn't always, because I
Well,
was assigned.
if not, Abby would be like beating me.
But
I'm just kidding.
so you're doing everything you can to get qualified people to be long-term substitutes, and I'm sure it is not easy.
Well, and I think
Sure
what Ms.
of
Lowry
that.
just said is important to note as well, which I didn't even think about until right now. When you have teachers who have let their certifications lapse, they're also lumped into this category. So it's not that they haven't been teaching or that they've let their certification lapse. So then they're falling into this category as a vacancy, where it's not really a vacancy. They just need to up their certification. So that category, there are multiple kinds of vacancies that exist in that category.
I can tell you your principals are doing a good job. Whenever my wife and I visit a school, it's the first, how would you like to substitute? Sure. So I can't. So but with the Dreambox, the Dreambox, I understand that that possibly the Dream Box is not helping students as far as performance in math or academic performance in math. I know the final results aren't in yet, but this is what I'm hearing. Can you comment
We're
on that?
evaluating it. We're evaluating
sorry,
it.
what?
We are evaluating it, and just as we've done with other programs, we had another program, I won't say the name of it just to kind of preserve their innocence, but if it isn't working, we turn it off. If it is working, we continue.
Can we stop buying it?
And so we can.
Yeah.
So as soon as we get the results back, we'll know.
When do you expect it?
Fall, this fall. This fall, this coming
Okay,
fall.
good.
Yes.
I've heard about it, so we'll see.
We'll see.
Thank you
you.
so much.
What other questions or comments do we have? Councilman Patoka, you have anything?
I do have one, I don't know if this is in the weeds, but it pertains to a specific school. Bedford Elementary has not had a full-time assistant principal, and I was told that it is in the budget this year, but I wanted to verify
It is.
that it in
It
fact
is.
is in the budget.
We're asking for 3.5 assistant principals to reinstate those assistant principals at the small schools. A few years back, they were cut. And again, there are some administrative duties and tasks that really only an administrator can do. So last year, I actually shrunk central office staff to be able to reinstate half time of those APs. And now this just rounds that out to the other half so that they can have a full-time AP again.
Thanks. I just want to say to my colleagues, I think that schools, investing in our children and schools is the best investment we can make as elected officials here. I once had a friend who helped me prepare for this job that said, the easiest decisions that we'll be asked to make are those that benefit the minority of the present. And the most difficult decisions that we'll be asked to make are the ones that benefit the majority of the future. And I think investing in schools invests in the majority of the future. And that's the difficult choice we have, and I would encourage you to support our schools as best that we can.
Thank you. And I think on that note, I'd like to publicly ask Councilman Catch and Councilman Marks, because I've heard many, many times how Delaney is important, how Towson is important. So I'd really like to ask both of them, what type of revenues are they prepared to increase in order to have better schools and to have better education? And I know, obviously, the impact and the hotel tax really doesn't generate any of the revenues, so I'm really curious to hear their ideas on how we can pay for a new Towson and how we can pay for a new Delaney if we're not prepared to increase revenues. So
Well,
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I don't really think this is the right place or time, but let me just say that I'm very interested in what happens tomorrow when we take a look at the budget and consider reductions and increases in spending, because this year, whatever we do this year is going to have an effect on next year. We don't know what the legislature is going to do with Kerwin, and as soon as we decide what we're going to do with this education budget, then you go forward, then you think about and talk about the revenue side, and I'm just not prepared to talk about that.
Well, I mean, I hear you and Councilman Marks constantly talking about new schools, but when it comes to increasing revenues to actually pay for those schools, suddenly you guys go pretty quiet. So, Councilman Marks, maybe you might be able to respond?
Are you prepared to talk about the discussions that went underway leading up to the budget submission and why your high school advanced and ours didn't?
You know, to me, this is about getting high schools everywhere. Delaney, Towson, Lansdowne, we're all in this together, and I don't think it's prudent to be dividing anybody. I think the only reason why Lansdowne is on planning is just because it happens to be the worst high school out there, but I'm absolutely supportive of Delaney. I'm absolutely supportive of Towson, but that does require a revenue increase. So I'd be really curious to hear yours and Councilman Catch's solution to how we close this deficit that we have. I mean, if we want these schools and if we want these things, we have to pay for them. So I really would love to hear publicly your answer.
Okay. I would have loved to have had a Democratic vote last year when the Republicans tried to cut stat funding by millions of dollars, which we didn't, number one. Number two, I would have liked to have leadership in the past on getting impact fees earlier. And we just got it this year, thanks to Senator Chris West and Delegate Lafferty and other legislators. That would have been helpful. Three, I would love to support this year with the impact fee bill, which isn't perfect, but my version advances it by at least a little bit. There's three ways. And fourth, as far as Lansdowne High School, which deserves to certainly advance, Towson is older, that's more overcrowded. Objectively speaking, there's no reason why Towson was leapfrogged over for Lansdowne.
Well, Councilman Marks, respectfully, you and I both know that the impact fee bill doesn't add much to revenues, and neither does the hotel tax. So if we want these schools, and we all do, I went into high school at Towson, I went into high school at Delaney. Can you tell me what revenues are both of you prepared to vote to increase in order to make these things happen? Because these things do cost money, and we can't just say we want everything, and when it comes to trying how to pay for it, we suddenly aren't going to vote for it. So I'd like to just ask publicly, very publicly, what's your solution on how we can get these schools quicker?
Tell you what, Councilman Quirk, agree to $30 million in cuts to this budget, and then we'll talk.
Councilman Katz, you have anything? Any other questions? Councilman Crandall?
I'd like to get back on track and maybe ask the superintendent a question.
Sure. More than happy. Go ahead, Councilman Crandall.
Okay. I don't know if the superintendent needs to be part of our debate up here. So you mentioned that the school system we're growing by about 600 students a year.
We're growing about 1,000 students a year. We've grown about 650 ESOL students
Okay.
since October.
So when we had we had our public budget hearing, usually the only person that ever speaks at those hearings is Abby Baton. I think she holds the record in the last 4 years. But we had over 100 people come in, some supportive of the county executive's budget, some not. But in that hearing, Anirban Basu said that the county's actually lost population. And I know this isn't necessarily apples to apples, but I'm just curious as to what is driving such growth in the school system when the county's actually, I think Anirban said we're 700 or so. We lost about 700 or so people in the last year. So it's not. I don't know how to equate those two facts. Massive growth in the school system, but population decrease.
Right. Well, go right ahead.
Are we having too many babies?
No, Councilman Crandall, that caught us too. I'm investigating that right now. So if you look at the back end of the population, with respect to the demographics of the county, and we certainly can check this with Social Security. You have to capture in the deaths, the back end of people who have died as well. So you got attrition on the back end, people coming out of the population because of the age of our county. So we want to see what side of that, because that caught me too. But I also know that we have one of the oldest counties on the East Coast. So if you factor in new people coming in, younger families, children, and you factor in the death rates, I was just at the centenarian program last week. We have over 70 people who are 100 years old, but there's a number of people between 80 and 100 who died as well. So I'm trying to get that data, and it's easy to get the death data by census tract and catchment area too, so we can reconcile. So that wouldn't impact the school system. So we are looking at that one too, and
Right,
I'll be happy to share.
I know it's not apples to apples.
Right, but we'll share with you, because when he said that,
it didn't. The two facts don't quite add up. So it'd be good to see that data.
Right.
And if you could share that with us, that'd be good.
well, I'll be happy to share with you, because I wanted to reconcile it as well. Because our county, based on the projections going forward, our county is still growing. But quite naturally, people are going to die too between now and the next 10 years, and more people will attrit by death because we have an older county. But I'll be happy to give it to you. Social Security has the largest counting of death records in the world, so we can do it that way.
Okay.
Councilman Jones.
Ms. Rogers, when my council colleague brought it up, first thing I thought of, well, young people are moving in and older people are moving out. And then in a small part of my mind, I thought, man, I guess a few of them may be dying. See, I like to think that they're all moving to Florida. I like to, in my mind, I guess like to think that all these older people are moving to Florida, and that's where they're going to enjoy the rest of their days, and that's why the disparity.
Well, I think Kings Park would beg to differ with you.
All right, okay, that's a pass from Councilman Crandall. Councilman Patoka?
Just in terms of counties, whether we're increasing in growth or declining, I think if we have great schools that people will want to move to Baltimore County and fill seats throughout the county, and we need to be prepared for that because I believe we will have great schools if we have the fortitude to invest in our schools. And so it gets back to my point earlier. People move to Howard County because they've had the political fortitude to invest in their school system. And I believe that we can do the same because I have faith in my colleagues that we'll do the right thing here.
Councilman Jones.
If that were so true, then I guess Howard County would be 3 times bigger than us as opposed to us being 3 times bigger than them. So obviously the great schools in Howard County is not enough to cause a big exodus of people from Baltimore City and Baltimore County and Harford County, everywhere else. Howard County would be so tight nobody could move. But the fact remains they're less than a third our size. So you can't just put it all, although we like to think, but you can't put it all on schools.
Other questions or comments for the members or for this?
I would just like to submit, and I believe that the superintendent and her team would agree that this council has been extremely supportive of Baltimore County Public Schools, and even though some cuts were suggested last year, even though there's potential reductions in this budget, we've made a significant amount of investment in Baltimore County Public Schools. So to say that we haven't dismisses what was last year, $1.6 billion, about 50% of the overall revenues in Baltimore County. So I think that Baltimore County actually does an extreme amount of investment in our school system.
Councilman Marks?
I'd like to ask our auditors, do we have any estimate of the amount that has been spent on STAT since 2013? Over $400 million, is that roughly accurate? It's in the hundreds of millions, correct? Well, I want to commend the county executive. I think the county executive really looked at this and curtailing costs. I think the superintendent has also done so. And, I will freely admit, quite frankly, and I was serving here 2013-14, I wish the councils back then had been a little more conservative in budgeting money for that program. Councilman Quirk, you're the only other person that was here at that time. Do you agree that we should have cut more at the time?
I think some of the changes that we're making in STAT right now might make sense, especially with kindergarten or first grade or second grade. But I would say that I think STAT has become a favored kind of whipping post for a lot of people when we got to be really careful with cutting STAT and the way we cut STAT, because there are still a lot of kids in our public school system that unfortunately can't afford a computer, can't afford a digital device, and we really need to keep equity in mind when we're making these decisions. They're not just numbers. These have real impacts on real people. And so I think it's a really easy political optic to go after STAT, but at the end of the day, I also think we have to be really, really careful in how we do it.
It's also an easy political optic to go after two of your colleagues when we're trying to build a bipartisan budget.
Okay, then please help us on the revenue side. Councilman Cass.
I certainly am. Look at my
I will
bill.
watch you do it.
Watch me. I'm trying real hard.
As
Joe
far
Green.
as equity goes, unfortunately, that equity does not include many of my constituents, because guess what? My constituents in northern Baltimore County, there's over 25,000 houses that have no internet or any opportunity to get internet. So I think if we're going to do equality, we should probably require that the school board provide internet for students in northern Baltimore County. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I mean, we can certainly take a look at that
Don't,
as a resident
don't we have it
of
in the
North-
schools? We have internet access in
Yeah,
all
but
We
schools?
do have internet in
But
our
they
schools.
can't.
How about in the libraries? Do we have them in the libraries?
We
Do you know
do.
how far it is from Maryland Line to Hereford Library?
That's definitely a
You
big
gotta
issue
have
for our cable companies.
14-year-olds driving a car?
Other questions or comments? Is everybody, Councilman Patoka?
Just to comment on Councilman Crandall's comment, I didn't mean to infer there wasn't past investment in schools, but looking towards the future, I'm just suggesting that we support the school's request here.
Yeah, and I do, in fairness, think that we have come a long way. We've invested a lot of money in our schools, but everybody up here right now will agree with one thing, is we still got a long, long way to go, and we got to figure out how to pay for these things. If we want these things, the money's not going to magically appear. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to raise those revenues. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much. Appreciate y'all coming out.
Thank you so much.